Thank you everyone for inviting me. Yeah, I'm Jeremy Levine from the Wild Sun Rescue Center. I've been in Costa Rica for about 15 years. There's a few people from the team here that I'd like to point out actually. We have Jess, is our Scarlet Macaw manager on site. I'll get into that project in a second. Margot in the pink shirt is our board chair of Wild Sun Rescue. And Giovanna in the blue shirt runs our nonprofit organization called Green Wave Enterprises. It's a 501c3 in the United States. We also have a nonprofit association here in Costa Rica. We're over the hills in Cabuya. If you're not familiar with the area, it's about an hour drive. It's right next to the Cabo Blanco Park entry. So a little bit about what we do. We treat sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife, pretty much anything that comes through the doors, except for crocodiles and a few other animals that are more challenging to handle. But we have a lot of howler monkeys, a lot of howler monkey babies that we have to raise in particular. We always have the goal of releasing the animals back into the wild, so we're very strict about our management, making sure that we're not petting these animals or using their names or touching them unless it's medically necessary. We want them as wild as possible so they can be put back into the wild. We also reintroduce locally extinct species. So right now we're working with the scarlet macaw, which I'll get more into. There's a picture down here on the bottom right, bringing them back to fly in this area once again. We promote conservation. We seek to identify the major threats in this area and mitigate those threats, find solutions to those threats. We educate the public. We train the next generation of wildlife biologists and veterinarians through our internships. To date, we've trained over 1,200 students, whether they're volunteers, they're biology interns, pre-vets. We've helped over 100 students get into vet school through our programs as well. And it's all centered around conservation. So the threats to wildlife, the top reasons that we have animals coming into Wild Sun, the number one reason is really electrocution of wildlife, and it's mostly howler monkeys. Some of you, who here is familiar with Somos Congos? Anyone? Okay, so Somos Congos is an organization that's dealing specifically with the electrocution problem of howler monkeys, but a lot of people kind of confuse them with us. So basically they will pick up the animal and then their first stop is Wild Sun Rescue Center. We have veterinarians, we take care of these animals until they can be released, and sometimes it's up to 3 years until they can be released back to the wild, all at our own expense, and we have various ways that we fund it. Dog and cat attacks, part of the paradise of being here. When I first got here, I'll admit, I saw these dogs running loose, and I was like, oh my God, they have their own lives. This is amazing. Start getting into wildlife rescue and rehab, and you start seeing all of the animals that are attack victims of these dogs and cats that are running freely. So there's a lot of issues with that are kind of behind the scenes that people don't realize. And so one of the things that we want to push for is responsible pet ownership here in Costa Rica, and passing legislation to make sure that dogs and cats are neutered and they're fed well, and they're getting their meds so they're not spreading diseases, etc. Accidental kidnapping, this tends to happen when people with very good intentions find a baby animal. Often a baby squirrel, could be a baby deer. It's in their backyard because the mother parked them for the day and they go off foraging and they're going to come back to nurse. But someone found that baby deer and they're like, oh my God, take it to the rescue center. And they bring it to us. And by the time we go back there, we can't find the mother won't accept it. And we have to raise that baby deer until it can be released. And its chance of survival is as good as we are rehabbing these animals. Their chance of survival goes down if they're not being raised by their parents. So it's whenever you see a baby animal in the forest, on the ground, 99% of the time it's best to leave them where they are. Or you could call us and we can walk you through it. Obviously, if there's an imminent threat, there's a fire surrounding them, you can move that animal. But otherwise, stay back, watch. The mother will come back within several hours and take it to where it needs to be. Hit by car, illegal pet trade. Okay, the focus today is actually that we want to raise money. We want to raise funds for two distinct projects. They do work hand in hand, actually. I've been meeting with, first had a meeting with Andre, that led to a meeting with Levine. Levine and Serrana came to Wild Sun, and we've been in talks for a little over a month now. And it seems like a lot of our philosophies are aligned very well. for conservation, for living in harmony with nature. We have a couple big projects that Levine has committed land in Yoko South to do this as long as we can get it funded. And what these projects are, they're pretty exciting. One is bringing back the scarlet macaws to Santa Teresa. Everyone knows the scarlet macaw? You often see them on pirate shoulders, and they're red, yellow, blue parrots. They're rainbow birds. They're charismatic, some of the most beautiful birds in the world. They're native to Costa Rica. They used to fly over 85% of this country, and they're now down to about 10% of the country. We've been breeding and reintroducing them to Kabuya. We've now released 35. We'll get into that more in a moment. And the other project is to create a sanctuary hotel. As you can see here, well, first of all, let me put this disclaimer in. This is a really big idea. There's one other place in the world that's doing something similar. There's only a handful that are somewhat similar, but one that's doing the model that we want to create. First and foremost, everything we do is for the benefit of the animals first. We're not going to exploit any animals. We're not going to put their welfare in danger in any way, right? We have a rescue center now where we treat all kinds of animals, and as much as we try to return them all to the wild, there's always a handful that cannot be returned to the wild. They're either not going to survive because it's a predator that's lost an eye, or a monkey that's lost a couple of limbs in an electrocution, for example. Sometimes they can be reintroduced, and sometimes they can't, and we always try. But if they can't, then they need a place to live. The alternative is euthanasia. But if you can provide them with a comfortable place to live, and you can utilize them for educational purposes to show people what's happening here, how can we stop that from happening, maybe pull on the heartstrings, inspire people to be animal caretakers, biologists, veterinarians in the future, then it's worth keeping them alive and doing something with them. So picture a luxury hotel, and in your room, you have a floor-to-ceiling window, and you have an anteater, or a jaguar, or a danta, or sloths right outside your window. It would be a pretty awesome experience, in my opinion. We want the animals to be safe, their anxiety levels to be managed, but we're going to have these immersive experiences where they're on the other side of the window, but they can't see you, but they're being fed right there, so you're like right in the heart of it. We're making these areas like their dens where they're going to be comfortable, so you can sleep on the other side of the window or have a little hot tub on the other side from them. It's luxurious. Other experiences where we have tree houses that are canopy level to the spider monkeys, for example. Tunnels with, maybe some of you have been on African safari where they have elephant blinds, and an elephant blind is basically like an underground cabin that's comfortable, but it has windows at eye level where elephants are coming to drink water from a watering hole, and you get to be in the middle of it all, but they're not affected by you and your presence. So that's kind of the idea of what we want to get into. And the reason is, Wild Sun Rescue right now, we're rescuing, on average per year, about 120 animals, right? There's a higher demand than that, than we can actually take. And that's because of lack of resources, lack of infrastructure, lack of staff, And not that we're still raising and spending our budgets more than $250,000 a year to run what we run, but we could get to another level. We've been growing every year that we've been doing it, but there's animals we have to turn away. There are conservation projects that we really want to get into. We want to stop the electrocution problem, for example. How do you do that? Some people have other ideas, but our idea is to sue the electric company. We have a lawsuit mounted and pending right now to sue ISE because they actually have a legal application to keep animals safe in this country. And I could get into that if anyone's interested. But our lawyer's pro bono, and we don't have enough resources to pay him so that he moves it along and he's dragging his feet. And we need more resources for things like that. Passing legislation for responsible pet ownership in this country, that's important. Reintroducing locally extinct species that can restore balance to the ecosystem, help fight climate change. Right now it's the scarlet macaw, but we have our eyes set on other animals, and each animal takes its fair bit of research. You got to do it right. You have to have your fair bit of infrastructure and staff to take care of them, to reintroduce them back into the wild. To pay for all of this, we need quite a bit more money. This idea we've had kind of on a different scale, but when Margot, our board chair, happened to be taking a business trip to Canberra, Australia, and as she always does, she looks for the best wildlife experience in town. She found this hotel there called the Jamala Wildlife Lodge. Jamala is a zoo, so they're different than we are. We're a rescue center, we're a sanctuary, and they're exotic animals. They have lions. This is Australia, so they shouldn't have lions. They have a tree house for the giraffes, and the giraffes are eating out of your hand from your balcony, you know. Jamala, they also have a capuchin room, for example. Their lion room, they charge, to give you an idea, $3,000 a night to stay in the lion room. Their capuchin room, which is the low-end room, is $1,500 a night. And you're in luxury, beautiful restaurant, really good food, you know, all-inclusive. It's an experience and a half. For us, it would be slightly different. We would scale back we're not feeding animals by hand. We're always more interested in their welfare. But when you start to do the math, if we're going to charge $2,000 a night, and Nantipa does that in Christmas week for a one bedroom on the beach with a king size bed, it's like now you're in the room with the jaguar. I think we could charge something similar to Nantipa. Then you're raising $3 million, $5 million, $6 million a year to then start to tackle some of these issues that we're talking about. So we've been trying to have a sanctuary for a long time. This is how most rescue centers in Costa Rica fund their rescue centers. We weren't allowed to do that. Has anyone been here long enough to know a rescue center called Rain Song? Raise your hand. Yeah? Okay, a couple people. Rain Song was a rescue center that was defunct. I bought that property and we turned it into what it is today. But it used to be you pay $5 to play with the capuchin monkey. Pay $5 to play with the kinkajou. You know, and I lived here at the time and I used to go there. You know, I didn't know how bad it was for the animals. I didn't know anything. I just knew I loved anteaters, and I thought it was hilarious when he stuck his tongue in my ear and it's this long. So I did that for a while, but everyone realized pretty quickly that it was poorly run. The animals weren't being released. It ended up being shut down by the government. When I bought the land from the previous owner, a couple of years had gone by, but Manai, the environmental ministry, was very skeptical because I bought from her, I had a connection to her, and they told me from the get-go, we'll give you a rescue center permit, but we will never give you a sanctuary permit, right? Sanctuary permit is how all rescue centers in Costa Rica fund their operations. So we had to be creative. We opened a hotel. Through the hotel, we run our internship programs, our pre-vet program, for example. These pre-vets pay thousands of dollars to do this program. They shadow vets. They help them get into vet school. We had to be super creative about it. But we're still nowhere near the level where we can raise this amount of money to tackle those problems. So the model of this sanctuary hotel is it can raise a whole lot of money. So first and foremost, it's to cover rescue center expenses, which currently the budget's $250,000 a year, but that would grow if we accepted every animal and met the entire demand of this area, because there's no other rescue center until Nosara. So it would cover all those expenses. In addition to that, we'll have a 10% of revenue conservation fund, and that goes towards lawsuit against ISE. You know, hopefully that'll be resolved by the time this gets built. Passing the dog and cat legislation, reintroducing more locally extinct species. If there's money left over, and the idea is that we have investors we need about $5 million to build this. The investors have votes in what we do, right? We'll all say these are the most pressing problems right now. Where should we put our money? And we as a team will decide with the expertise of biologists and veterinarians and wildlife and conservation experts. If there's money left over, we start helping support and build out the biological corridors, right? So other problems that are much bigger and grander that I can get into, but we're talking about $500,000 goes towards covering a growing rescue center's expenses. Another $500,000 goes towards a conservation fund. And then in addition to that, there's several $1 million that investors can enjoy the proceeds of. So this is why it's a really big idea for us. And the fact that Levine has told us that we have the land for you, we want this to be a tenet of Yoko village, right? And that it'll be beautiful, it'll be central, and it falls within our shared visions and beliefs of sustainability and conservation and doing things the right way. It's a pretty incredible opportunity, I think, for everyone. I hope that we can find a shared vision to make this a reality. That was just off the cuff. I'm going to read some stuff now. So the scarlet macaws, they disappeared from this area around 60 years ago due to habitat loss and the illegal pet trade, et cetera. But they're very important. They play an important role in the ecosystem for seed dispersal, control of trees and shrubs. They're like nature's gardeners. So we have on site right now 6 breeding pairs, and we've been releasing about 10 macaws per year into Kabuya. We have 15, well, that's the average. So we have 15 ready for this April. And once we release those 15, it'll be close to 50. And our idea from the beginning was to release 50 in Kabuya and then 50 in Santa Teresa / Malpais. We've been we're actively seeking a partner for that. We have a partnership with the Soprolapa. Soprolapa is an organization in Tambor, and they've been breeding and releasing scarlet macaws since before we began. We share a biologist, we share the breeding birds, the whole program is together, and we've done some remarkable things. In Kabuya alone, we have 33 flying freely. We've released 35, one died, one had to be recaptured and will be re-released again. But so we'll be close to that magic number of 50 in April. This is pretty crazy. So scarlet macaws, the last time there was a survey done in Costa Rica, they estimated there were about 2,000 individuals left in the country, right? In the Osa Peninsula, there were about 1,200 estimated. In the Carrara Park, which is near Jaco and Manuel Antonio, a bit inland, there was about 450. And now, through our efforts, between us and Soprolapa, we've bred and released 200 scarlet macaws, 165 in Tambor, 35 by us, and growing. Last time they were counted, the 200 released have multiplied into 250. So it's a viable population that's growing. 250, when there were 200 in this country before, 2,000, that's more than 10% of the entire population of this country because of our reintroduction efforts. So we're making a big difference. Thank you. They're the largest population of macaws in Costa Rica. We want to bring them back to Santa Teresa. So the idea is we want to repopulate this whole peninsula. The best way to do that, if you just start releasing them in one area, it takes the macaws a long time to saturate an area and slowly spread out. But if you can have a population and a release point in Kabuya, one in Tambor, one in Santa Teresa, they all cross flight patterns, and then they fill up the whole entire Cobano district will have covered within a few years. And then we're also actively speaking with someone in the Rio Frio area, and so you start to see, you dot the landscape, and then all of a sudden there's macaws everywhere once again. The use of the funds, so for this project, and this is something, there's 2 different timelines for the macaws in Santa Teresa and the Sanctuary Hotel, which would take a little bit longer to get all the permits in the building and everything in order. The macaws are the first order of business. We need for this $90,000 in the first year, and then about $60,000 per year from years 2 through 5, and then job done. We wipe our hands clean, let the birds reproduce on their own and do their thing, and we can all enjoy it. And that money would go towards staff, food for the animals, the permits, the infrastructure that we would have to build in the first year, which is why it's 90, and then 60 below that. We monitor the birds afterwards. We do post-release feeding. This is one of the cool parts. So at Wild Sun, we released them right at our rescue center. And because there were no other scarlet macaws there when we started to release, there's no way to guarantee that they're going to get their full intake of food every day. To increase their chance of survival, we give them supplemental feeding twice a day. Not only do we give them enough calorie intake that they'll survive, but we introduce harvested native fruits and seeds that they're going to then start to find out on their own. And when they start to recognize, oh, that's a guasimo seed, hey, there's a guasimo tree, you start seeing them eat there at Wild Sun. Then you start seeing them fly off into the village, and they're finding the guasimo trees. And then slowly but surely, they come back less and less to the food trays. There's always a group that just feels really comfortable, and they stick around. And that's awesome, right? Like, that's not what we wanted, but it's cool. Like, these beautiful birds are doing laps around our property every single evening, every single morning. It's really special to be there for it. And that would happen at Yoko South, right? We start putting up those feeding trays. They're coming back every day. A few of them feel comfortable. We put up nesting boxes for them also. They come back and breed year after year. They multiply. They continue to use those nesting sites year after year. And it makes a firm, solid, consistent presence of scarlet macaws at Yoko South and beyond. They'll stretch into Santa Teresa, and everyone will want to know where they're coming from, and they'll know that it's Yoko Village and what an amazing conservation effort that they've done to get them back to Santa Teresa. That's what they tell me anyway in Kampuya, and I enjoy that quite a bit. Okay, maintenance, transportation, etc., DNA testing. You can get into all the use of the funds exactly when you want to. The Sanctuary Hotel, we want to have enclosures for not only the animals that we can't release directly from here, but there's other species that we don't have in the Nicoya Peninsula that are iconic in Costa Rica. Jaguars, spider monkeys, tapir, sloths, etc. There's more down the line. And they're in other rescue centers, and they also need to be placed somewhere, and there are animals that we'd like to bring here so we can teach people about these are animals that did live here. They don't now, and how do we get them back into the environment? And also, everyone wants to see sloths. We get so many people contacting us and saying, oh my God, we'd love to come. Do you have sloths? No? Oh, and we don't hear from them yet. But anyway, the sanctuary itself, we want to provide world-class care for the animals that can't be released, education for the public. It's going to create a stable revenue source for rescue and conservation initiatives. In the small print, and this is very important, the welfare of the animals is our number one priority. That will not be compromised in any way, shape, or form. We believe this project will have big returns for the planet and for the investor. So by investing in this, if we make this happen, and we will, and the first biggest domino to fall is Laurent saying, yes, we have the property, let's make this happen. So we believe very quickly we'll be able to garner a lot of support for this idea. This hotel sanctuary will support wildlife rescue because it's going to continue to pay for our expenses at Wild Sun, provide care for the animals that can't be returned to the wild, provide memorable once-in-a-lifetime experiences for guests that will spread the word, hopefully be inspired to do something for nature and conservation and really inspire the next generation of conservationists. We're going to educate the sanctuary visitors. We're going to support large-scale conservation measures, mitigating core threats. I got into that a little bit, but that's a 10% fund, and that's the model, and there's no getting away from that. This is not a for-profit only business. This is a conservation initiative where money will be made by the investors as well. It's going to turn a wild profit. And here's the thing. Like, when you get into conservation and nonprofits, right? Nonprofit. It's a very touchy subject if you start talking about making money, right? People don't like to talk about making money and doing something good at the same time. But I truly believe that incentives are not aligned for people to do good things, right? So if you think about the medical profession in the United States, for example, there's a lot of money to be made. So a lot of people go into the medical profession not because they always wanted to take care of everyone around them, sometimes because they want to make a lot of money and have a good lifestyle. Their incentives are aligned to become doctors, and we have a huge medical field in the United States. If you had to be a poor doctor, and it's harder to attract talent to do those sorts of things. So if there could be profit made while conservation is being done, I think this is a model that can be replicated around the world to do more conservation in a much greater scale than we are today. I think it's scalable, I think it's replicable, and I think it's important for the future of conservation. Okay, adventure meets luxury. We expect a 100% return on investment within the first 5 years. It's a $5 million investment, more or less. We're still working out all the kinks with architectural designs, etc. Amazing location in Yoko South, close to everything, but also in its isolated environment. We're going to have unique and immersive animal encounters. The project supports wildlife preservation and conservation, and Wild Sun is the ideal partner for this. And why? We already have a hotel. We already know how to run a hotel. Of course, this is going to be on a different scale, so we will seek out partners. We have 7 years of wildlife care and rehabilitation experience with permits. We actually started almost 10 years ago, but red tape, Menai. Wild Sun, we recently successfully renewed all of our rescue center permits for the next 5 years. We're good, and we have excellent working relationships with Menai, the environmental ministry. We've been talking about this concept for the past over a year now with the powers that be at Menai, and they support us fully in this endeavor. And now it's about where's the land, presenting the permits, getting it through, and making it happen. So that's that. If anyone's interested in supporting us financially now, before these things happen, you could always make a one-time donation or a monthly pledge. And then the contact information, if you want to scan that QR code, it will give you my WhatsApp contact, our website, email address, etc.